We're on our last article. Some of you are like, thank God. Some of you are like, sad. This came out of NBC, but I was seeing like whispers about it in other places. Let's go through it a little bit, and if we find it interesting, we'll keep going. It says evictions are piling up across the U.S. as COVID era protections end and rents climb. Okay. Eviction filings have been increasing since the spring in many places, and the problem is expected to get worse in the coming months as federal rental assistance runs out. Well, it may. Maybe there shouldn't be federal rental assistance that's that significant a part of the economy. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm just saying. On a recent Friday morning, more than 100 renters facing eviction filed through Arizona Judge Anna Huberman's court in what's becoming a typical day for her as a wave of evictions hits Phoenix and other cities large and small around the country. The vast majority of the renters that day had missed their October payments a few weeks earlier and were now at risk of being removed from their homes within days. One woman said her rent money that went to pay for her mother's funeral. A daycare worker said she didn't get paid for 2 weeks when her workplace was simply shut down due to COVID. And another man said he started a new job and had yet to get to his first check. These are all real American problems. This is not unusual. What's not a real American problem is Elizabeth Holmes and her desire to stay in her mansion and not go to prison for the things that she did. That's not that's an American story, but that's not what real people are dealing with on a daily basis. Eviction filings have been on the rise and were above their historical averages in half of the 1,059 counties tracked by Legal Services Corp, a federally funded legal aid group, during either August or September. By the way, I hate the NGOs. I'm convinced NGOs are a cancer to society. The problem is expected to get worse in the upcoming months as federal rental assistance money runs out and people are unable to keep pace with rising rents and decades-high inflation, according to interviews with more than a dozen housing advocates, government officials, and industry experts. That's exactly right. This hidden, horrible tax on income in the way of inflation that has been put on us by the political party. I mean, you basically, when you print checks, okay, you lower the value of the money. That's when you hand out checks, that's what happens. Now that rental assistance is over, now that the local moratoriums are over, we're playing catch up to what the pandemic did. And my biggest fear is the cliff that we've been all anticipating is here. From here on out, it's going to be a very, very difficult time, said Tim Thomas, a research director at the Urban Displacement Project at the University of California, Berkeley. I don't want to be a doom and gloom person, but we're probably going to see about the worst of what's about to happen. That's kind of being a doom and gloom person. During the first year of the pandemic, now, by the way, you cannot blame the pandemic for the evictions. The people have to have income to stay somewhere, okay? And if you say that your COVID kept your income from working, what are you doing about that now? I'm putting it out there. It's not because they're no longer fixing the COVID problem. That's not the issue. These people are in the wrong spot. And let me try to explain that. I don't want to be cruel, but look, if your income is $1,000 a month, let's just say, okay, and your rent is $975 a month, okay, one of those two things has to change. You either have to find rent for like $200 a month or a job with income of higher. That's the way it is. It's not for the government to bridge the gap or to get you in a better place than you can afford. I'm sorry, that might come across as harsh, but that is a problem. And you say, well, John, we can't, I mean, the rents are going out of control. We can't afford it. Well, that's why wage growth has to accompany inflation, or else it's just, we're all screwed, which is what the government isn't going to fix it by giving you more rent money. The federal money that began running out in many areas this summer, and the Treasury Department estimates less than $7 billion out of the total $46.5 billion remains available, removing the last lifeline of pandemic-era protections that more than 7 million renters have relied on. It's just, don't. The struggle to find affordable housing comes amid wider anxiety and pessimism Americans have around the economy, which voters have consistently ranked as a top concern ahead of next week's midterm elections. A CNBC poll in October found just 16% of voters believe the economy is excellent or good, and 59% of voters expect there will be a recession over the next 12 months. I'll tell you, the voting patterns didn't seem to indicate that people being broke or the economy was the number one issue. Despite a relatively strong job market and historically low unemployment, nearly 7.8 million Americans said they were behind on their rent in October, and 3 million felt like they were likely to be evicted in the next 2 months. That survey found 2.5 million people had experienced a rent increase of more than $500 over the past year. Which, I mean, even if you raise the rent $25 a month, you're going to be over $500. With the what was it? Let me, I'm not, I'm a little slow here at the end of the day. I'm sorry. Here, we'll do the exact number. So if you raise the rent $50, you're going to be over $500 a month. It says the increase. Oh, yeah. So with inflation and massive increases in rental prices that we've seen over the last few years, it's much worse for low-income renters than it was before the pandemic when we were already in an affordable housing crisis. That's right. That's right. I agree with that. 100%. Why? But why were we having an affordable housing crisis? What I'm trying to stay with is, look, if you're a millionaire, inflation doesn't really bother you, so you can't buy another Porsche. If you're a low income person and you're fighting inflation, this is killing you. You are screwed financially because your wage growth isn't going up. You're not keeping pace with inflation. You're going to work and you're going to have less every time you go to work. It says the increase in rents has begun to slow inflation, overall economic uncertainty of more people holding off moving, according to analysis by Redfin. Still, rents nationwide were up 9% in September compared to a year earlier. And more than a dozen cities had double-digit rent increases. In Phoenix, which has been a hotbed of iBuying, for example, rent increases have slowed in recent months, but June were up 24% year over year, with a median asking rent of $2,261 a month. In Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix, evictions are at the highest level since 2016, with more than 45,000 filings. Now we're at the end of the year, so I don't really. Lately, it just seems to be that's all we're doing. And then they go to a story. Now, here we go. Zenovia Johnson is one of those Phoenix renters who's been struggling to stay in her home because of rising rents. She said she missed her rent payment at the start of October and received an eviction notice from her landlord just days later. Now, look, if you're a property manager and someone doesn't pay rent, the eviction process takes time. They're already not paying their rent. You need to go ahead and file that immediately. This is proper property management. She borrowed money to cover her payment, but is now unsure how long she will be able to make November's rent. How she will make November's rent with the income from her telemarketing job unable to cover her bills. This is key. This is a key story. The woman has a job, or man, let's see, her home. So it's a woman. She has a job. The job isn't paying the rent. It doesn't cover her bills. She can go get a second job. A second job is not reflected in the employment numbers. And so I think that many people are getting second jobs because they have to. And even then, they're going to have issues. Last month, her car was repossessed because she'd been prioritizing her rent over her car payment. It says everything has gone up. I just can't keep up. The single mother of 2 young children, she said, she was not sure what she was going to do. This is a typical story. It doesn't matter if it's COVID. It doesn't matter anything. It does matter that we have this inflation problem, and not many people are doing anything about it. You say, what can you do about inflation? Well, stop printing money. I have other ways you can do it, but I don't want to get thrown off YouTube. Phoenix areas has some of the highest inflation in the country. Ugh. With prices up 13% in August including a 14% increase in food and 19% increase in housing costs. While the price of gas has fallen below $4 a gallon in most of the country, it still averages above $4.50 in Phoenix. But why did the gas prices fall there? And what's going to happen when we can't continue to drain the strategic reserve? What's going to happen then? One region that has seen the greatest increase in housing costs is Oklahoma City. Rents are up 24% in September compared to a year earlier to an average of $1,260 a month. Rents have been going up in part here because of a growing number of large out-of-state real estate investment firms buying up property in the region and raising rents, and a lack of affordable housing for lower-income families, local advocates said. Until we're able to better match wages with housing costs, evictions are going to continue to be a problem because with rising rents, people are having to stretch their budgets even more, said Sabine Brown, a senior policy analyst at the Oklahoma Policy Institute. One medical bill, one car repair can quickly push someone towards an eviction. This is exactly right. Until we're able to better match wages with housing costs, evictions are going to continue to be a problem. You can also say until we're able to better match wages with inflation, evictions are going to continue to be a problem. In Oklahoma County, which includes Oklahoma City, evictions have been steadily on the rise this year and are more than 40% above their pre-pandemic levels. With more than well, look, what if there was, let me just ask this question. What if there wasn't COVID, but we still had inflation? Would the numbers be similar? They're humans and their families with children, and this is Oklahoma, the heartland, so to speak. It's chronic here, just like it is in places where people seem to think that this is where these actions happen, but they're happening here too. They are humans, families with children. I get that. It's chronic. I agree. This was a problem before. Inflation and the Rona. Even areas seeing less dramatic increases in rent are seeing a rise in evictions as pandemic era protections end. But you don't need pandemic era protections. You need policies that actually work for the poor, the working poor, which there are millions of working poor in the United States. Good people doing the right thing. Not Elizabeth Holmes. And that's why it's so disgusting. Good people doing the best they can with what they've got, losing their homes, losing their cars. And this woman, fraudster, thinks it's okay to just stay in her millionaire mansion and not go to jail. Wow. I'm talking to a lot of people who are just now getting back on their feet and getting back to decent economic footing. I hear a lot of people saying they just need a little more time. I'm going back to work. My husband or wife is going back to work. We're going to get it back to where we are. We just need a little more time. Well, what happens when the inflation spiral causes job growth to stop and then reverse? Who gets hurt fastest? Is it going to be the millionaires? Nope. The same people who aren't affected in any way by inflation, other than they can't buy a second Porsche. In Minnesota, it's not just a problem isolated in major urban centers, but also rural and industrial communities where housing costs have been on the rise as well. In Clay County, a working class community across the state line from Fargo, North Dakota, the number of eviction filings in September were 3 times where they were before the pandemic. About half the county's 60,000 residents were having to spend more than 30% of their income on rent. And see, that's the problem. They've got jobs, they're not paying well enough, and we keep having policies that hurt the worker. Always hurt the worker. Both parties. No, the old status quo is not a normal one to return to. No one should want to return to a normal where eviction is too often seen as a first resort, not a last resort, where there's little mediation and where the overwhelming majority of tenants have no counseling or representation at all. Oh my God. Sperling said that more affordable housing is the long-term solution and the struggle renters are facing, but that's a goal that will take time and additional funding from Congress. Always we need more money. Literally, stop the regulations. Okay. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of regulations on building a home. Stop NIMBYism. Stop those two things. You'll have plenty of houses. There's no question that long after the pandemic is over, scarcity of affordable housing will be an issue that causes pain. See, but that's not it. It's not that there aren't enough houses. Okay. There aren't enough houses at the prices the workers can afford to pay. And why is that? It's because our economic policy is just terrible in the United States. Terrible. I'm not reading anymore. I'm done. I don't care. All right.